This episode is brought to you by Deal. Managing a global team is complex. Deal makes it simpler with payroll, HR, IT, and compliance, all in one place. That's why over 35,000 businesses trust Deal to hire, pay, and manage teams worldwide. See how Deal works at deal.com/agentan to learn more. That's DEEL.com/ADRIANTAN. Deal, your forever people platform.
It's not exactly a baby pool to adult pool. I would say that it's from a swimming pool to the open sea. You really do not know what is out there, right? This is a chance that you have to take. Please don't start a business if you are not ready to persist. A lot of people probably have the same misconception is you are your own boss, you control your own time. You're going to have so much more time. Technically, if you think about it, instead of your bosses owning your time during working hours, your client owns your time, and sometimes it's 24/7.
Welcome back to another episode of the show. Eric, welcome to my podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
People who are new to you, how do you normally introduce yourself?
By qualification, I'm a chartered accountant. Alright, so right now I'm actually running two of my own company, one accounting firm, and the other one is actually a consulting firm. So I am a certified management consultant.
I understand you're also doing teaching.
That is something that I'm doing on the side. Okay, so I am also an instructor as well as mentor at some of the programs at the university. Like right now, one that is ongoing is a national grid program with NTU and NUS.
So within all the people that I know who does portfolio career, and I'm not sure if you know of the term portfolio career. It's a new sexy word for fractional, and fractional is the new sexy word for freelancer. So basically, I think when it comes to portfolio career, you always come to my mind because you do many different things, and some of the things actually you can say there may be some overlap, but chances are they don't really have overlap. But having said that, you're still able to manage it well. So I'd like to touch more on that later on. But before that, let's go back in time. What were you doing before you decided on going independent?
So after I graduated, I started my career with Pricewaterhouse. I did audit for about 3 years. I don't think anybody will truly say that they love audit, so definitely not for me.
I haven't heard anyone.
Yeah, so a lot of my friends are auditors that nobody truly love audit, right? So I decided to leave. There was a few things I actually considered, and eventually I joined a sovereign VC fund. Okay, that was something that really interested. I was really interested and gave me a lot of satisfaction in the job. But after that, I wanted to progress my career, so I was thinking of actually moving from the buy side to the sell side. I actually joined an SME, a tech startup, for about 4 years. Right, the company raised actually quite a lot of money. I was acting as a CFO. Eventually it come to a point whereby, right, it's not going to continue, right, even despite all the money that was actually spent. At that point in time, I have two choices. One choice is I find a job. The other choice is that, right, maybe I should start my own, because that's when friends around me keep telling me that, hey, you know what, you can probably make more money with your competency. So why don't you try to actually start your own business?
So your friends are already on their own.
Interestingly, not all my friends who told me that are actually on my own.
They want you to be guinea pig.
Maybe, but they felt that I could do so much more lah. Yeah, correct. So at that point in time, there was actually one of the investors in a company that I went to for advice. Okay, his comment to me is that, okay, so basically, are you confident in the next 5 years if you to start your own, you can make at least twice as much as if you get a job? If so, right, it doesn't have to be guaranteed. If you think that it's a possibility, right, you should probably give it a shot. So that's how it started, and yeah, I didn't turn back from there.
What was going through your mind when you decided on it? Because I think for many people, when they think about going independent, it's always scary lah. It is uncharted water lah. It's the first time going from a baby pool to adult pool. How long did it take for you to process?
That is very true. I will add on to your analogy. It's not exactly a baby pool to adult pool. I will say that it's from a swimming pool to the open sea. You really do not know what is out there, right? This is a chance that you have to take. So there was a few points of consideration for me, right? I mean, we have known each other for a number of years, and you know, I'm married with 3 kids. One point of consideration is my family's standard of living cannot be compromised. So the fortunate thing is that my wife is supportive and she is working in a stable government job.
So in terms of timeline, when you decided to go independent, you already have 3 kids.
I already have 3 kids at that point in time. Yep. One of the things is that support from the wife, knowing that, well, she is going to be able to hold the fort for a period of time. The other thing is that I have to set a timeline for myself. In terms of like after I started, right, how long do I have to achieve a minimum return or salary for myself so that I can help to substantiate to actually support the standard of living for my family, right? So I gave myself about half a year to hit a minimum salary or take home of about $5,000. Fortunately for me at that point in time, I achieved that within about 3 months. Yeah. The other point of consideration here is that, right, is if I were to start a business and strike out on my own, if I were to do this for a year, 2 years or 3 years, do I still have market value and do I have a fallback plan? The fallback plan is actually to get a job, right? So at that point in time when I was still deciding, coincidentally one of my friends contacted me to say, hey, there's this friend of mine working for this company. They are looking to hire a finance manager. Do you know anyone that is interested? I wasn't going to take the job, but I thought that, okay, let's test what is my minimum market value if I need to fall back. So I actually called up the company to for interview. In the end, actually, I'm kind of overqualified for that position. Interestingly, the HR manager told me that at first, but instead of arranging for an interview, they called me back 2 days later to say, actually, we want to offer you the job. I didn't take it, but it was an additional comfort for me to know that there is a safety net to fall back on. So the whole process took me about 3-4 months to decide that, okay, let's do it.
And your plan back then to, of course, hit your 5K per month goal, what were some of the key ideas or key services that you had in mind then?
At that point in time, I actually started both sides concurrently, which is actually the accounting side and also the some consulting work. I also help people with an advisory. Right? So the key consideration is that for the accounting business that I started, to get enough client on a recurring basis, because for accounting the revenue is more recurring on an annual basis, to have a minimum number of clients I want on board, to have a minimum pay. And the other thing that came up fast and also helped me to hit that target earlier than expected was actually more for like grant advisory and some consulting work.
For the viewers who may find some relevance to what he said, because Eric actually is one of the profile in my book, No More Bosses. So some of the things that he mentioned here is also something that I've written up in the book as well. So feel free to go and check out the book to learn more. But where I want to go to is, how has that 50-50 ratio changed to what it is today? Because I understand, as we mentioned earlier on, currently you're also teaching, so that probably take up some percentage. What else are you doing?
These are the 3 main things I'm doing. So I'm doing some fractional CFO, but I will say that still fall under very much related to the consulting side.
Fractional people will disagree. Okay, please continue.
Yes, it's actually more an independent engagement, right? I don't build them from my company side, but I'm looking at it in terms of the scope of work, right? Consistency required and what actually help do for people. Yeah, if I were to choose, I have 2 main business, so if I were to choose, it's more towards the consulting side. Actually, over time, what is interesting is that for the consultancy business, your rates goes up, and also, right, the business actually comes from word of mouth. The business grow a lot faster. Okay, I won't say grow a lot faster. It grows steadily but bigger when compared to like accounting. So accounting is going to be very stable income. So also to share that about 3-4 years ago, right, at first my consulting side is bringing about more than 70% of my income, and I had the thought of actually selling my accounting firm. Right, I had 3 offers from friends, and my partner right now is the offer that I actually accepted, because they allow me to retain 35% of the shares, whereby they take care of the operations. I only have to be in charge of like business development to bring in new customers, and that allowed me to have a lot more time for the consulting side. And truth be told, the returns ROI from the effort spent is actually a lot more. For the teaching portion, it actually is something that came in about 8 years ago. It started with the Lean On Track program with NTU. So this is actually very much really a part-time thing. Normally when the engagement starts, right, is for a 2 months period or 1 month period, sometimes 3 months period. Typically, it will take up just like maybe half a day of my time to 1 day of my time per week. Yeah, so this is a very ad hoc part-time engagement. Probably take up about 10% of my time as.
So I think it's more of a hobby than...
It is interesting for me. This is something that I enjoy doing. In fact, I told you and I told my other friends before that when I retire, this is probably the only thing I will keep and continue doing. Yeah, it's very satisfying to be able to help and also to interact with a lot of entrepreneurs.
When I was teaching at ITE, even though it's a short stint, as much as it was challenging, there are also high moments when legit students actually are interested to learn what you teach. And sometimes that one or two highlights is enough to compensate for all the other lowlights within the classroom, and it feels very satisfying as a teacher.
It can be quite rewarding.
I personally feel you are in a great state of what many people would aspire to do. Within the fractional space I'm in, and I'm in a few chat groups where there are like literally hundreds of different people. The most ideal state is, of course, to look at, having eggs in different basket, so to speak, because many of them actually right now is even struggling to find one basket. But before we maybe touch on more about how you manage your day-to-day and how you secure all those kind of stuff, I'd like to again rewind the clock to go back to the earlier state when you first started your own independent journey. Because many people, when they look at the current state of where you are right now, they only see one side of the coin. They don't see the hardship, all the bad stuff that has happened. And one of the things that I try to bring across is you need to see both sides of the coin. Yeah, because you think the grass is greener on the other side. It is true, it's greener, but most of the time it's fertilized by bullshit. So I'm not saying those are bullshit moments, but I'm sure there are a lot of things that you have to undergo, some hard lessons you have to learn along the way to arrive to where you are today. Are there some significant or personal moments that you can share with us? And what exactly do you learn from it?
Agree. The grass is always greener on the other side, but what people do not see is that the effort going before the grass actually sprout from the land, of having to plow the land, having to fertilize it, water it every day to take care of the grass so that it is greener. There will be a lot of effort, and I think I can share this from the point of view that sometimes when I'm invited to talk to students or groups of people who are aspiring entrepreneurs, I always like to start off with the saying that, please don't start a business if you are not ready to persist. It is not easy. There are many moments, not just when I first started, even now, sometimes when things get overwhelming, that I will think about, hey, it is so much easier to just be an employee.
Time when I'm damn stressful, first thing I do is go LinkedIn jobs. I can see what is out there.
Exactly. I mean, you go to work at 9, you go home at 5, 6, and you can leave everything at work, right? But as a business owner, an entrepreneur, or even like a fractional C-suite, it is not something that sometimes you have a choice. When things need to be done and you have to follow up, you have to follow up. And even more, if for some companies, like for my accounting side, we have staff, you are also responsible of making sure that you are taking care of them. The company continues so that they can keep their job and you're able to reward them further as the company grows. So the burden is actually, the stress is definitely real and it's actually there. So you were saying that in the beginning when I first started, before I started, I gave myself very clear KPI and goals. Okay, so I was very, very, very clear that if I were to hit the target, then I will continue. If I'm not, I have promised myself and also told my wife that I will just go and get a job. Okay. Because I think the most important thing is to actually set a threshold of continuing or turning the other way. The reason for this is because it is an easy decision if the business do very well. It is also a very simple decision if the business do very badly. No brainer, you turn, go and get a job.
So it's the in-between.
Yeah, the in-between is the most challenging, where it's neither here nor there, and then you don't know, okay, should I continue? Is it worth my effort? And when you start to have doubts, it also affects your own commitment towards the venture. Yeah. So I feel that my key advice is that before starting, set very clear goal and threshold in terms of the milestones and the decisions to carry on, to grow it to a bigger venture, or actually to U-turn and just fall back on getting a job.
That's more on the goal setting aspect. Are there also things that you may have planned for, but given the dynamism of doing your own thing, things just fall sideways? Maybe some misconception to your impression of solopreneurship to begin with.
With all venture building, I will say that luck also plays a part. I will put myself in the category that I consider to be pretty lucky, that things have been smooth from the beginning, right? But if any misconception or things that I didn't expect, right, is when I started, and a lot of people probably have the same misconception, is you're your own boss, you control your own time. You're going to have so much more time, own time, own target. The fact here is that's not really true. Right? When you are a self-employed or your own boss, right? Technically, if you think about it, instead of your bosses owning your time during working hours, your client owns your time, and sometimes it's 24/7. Okay, so some of the things, especially in the beginning when I have to work a lot harder, it's basically really have to work through the weekend. I mean, I still do it sometimes now. I try to avoid that, but as I mentioned, I have 3 kids. And at point in time, my kids were still young. So taking time away from family, right, weekends to work, that's one of the things that was not really expected. I try to mitigate and control that in terms of, sure, if I have to follow up on something, if possible, as much as possible, I will do it at night. It can be tiring, but at least it allows me to put aside time for family.
That's something that I also experienced. I tried very hard to achieve the elusive work-life balance when I first started. But I realized it's just not possible. It's really impossible. I tried to give myself the equivalent of a 4-day work week and all that. So initially what I told myself is, okay, Friday, no laptop. No laptop, yes, but the iPad still appears. So you constantly have to adjust that. And you just reach a stage, sometime you have a deadline to hit on, say, the same Friday. You don't have a choice. You got to put in that time. But of course, I think with that said, it may seem like going independent only have all the bad stuff and don't have the good stuff. So on to counterbalance, I'm very certain you also experience some of the better stuff as well. Beyond what was mentioned earlier on, when your friend tried to convince you or ask you to be guinea pig, because you can probably earn triple or more as someone independent. What are some of the things that you have come to appreciate as someone who actually manages his own time?
In terms of true work-life balance, in terms of putting it in a straight line, right, that is consistently balanced, it's not possible. But it is still that, I mean, it's more like swing. Like you say, sometimes there are deadlines to be met, right? You have to actually spend more time. Okay. But there are also periods whereby you have more time, right? Then you can actually apportion that for the family. Yeah. I would guess one of the things that can still be done over the larger, I mean, looking at the bigger picture, right? If we consider time in terms of like a whole year, it still actually allows me to be able to plan things like holidays and all that. It can be planned ahead. So planning ahead, I mean, sometimes things do come in, but planning ahead, right, still allows me to actually have more time to put aside for things like a holiday and stuff. Yeah. Daily basis work-life balance is not possible, but maybe trying to achieve a certain level of work-life balance throughout the year, if you average it out, actually that's actually very doable.
Especially when you have unplanned downtime. So for the viewers and listeners, Eric had an accident while skiing or snowboarding.
It was actually sledding.
Sledding, okay. And that put him out of commission for what? 4, 5?
I was down for only, okay, so this actually is actually a bad thing of being a business owner rather than an employee. So actually, technically, right, I mean, I broke my spine. Technically, my MC is for 6 months. Yeah. But in the end, I can only afford bed rest and stop doing any work, right, for only about 2 months. Yeah. So when I'm able to sit up and walk, then I really started working at home.
And I believe also to some extent on your hospital bed as well. It's a bit inevitable. Eric and I share the same neurosurgeon because I also have sleep disc issue, and same thing, day after, even though I had issue typing with my left hand, I just use That unfortunately is the state lah. But I think to go back to what you said, there are always the good things that also come around with it. I'd like to move on to another aspect because you started your own journey quite some time back, and also as someone who worked with many other SME closely, as a CopSec, sometimes doing their books or even audit for their books, etc. You probably have seen a lot more newer companies or newer self-employed people coming along the way. What's your take on how different the landscape is right now from the day you started?
So there's actually a variety of business that people start, right? From tech to actually more traditional business. To be very frank, I think in certain sectors or verticals, right, it's getting increasingly harder. I would say that probably businesses in the more traditional space like F&B and whatnot, they're actually facing a larger challenge right now because the whole world just got out of the COVID situation. And during that, one of the things that happened during that period, right, is actually inflation. So for more traditional businesses, one of the things that is quite inevitable is like rental. And rental, at least for Singapore, I can only say for Singapore, is increasing. The margin got thinner, right? And with things that happen on a global scales like the Trump's tariffs policies right now, consumer, even if they have money, they are holding back on spending to a certain extent as well. So it's more challenging actually for traditional businesses. But I think, if let's say it's more for the tech businesses with AI, it actually make it a lot easier for them to accelerate their product development and also go to market become shorter. It shortened the period of validation they have to do in order to go to commercialize or actually to scale up. It really depends on what business to start.
I read a lot on the news about companies struggling, closing down. I think most recently there's this Floor Patesia or something that came onto the news because the owner wrote a very long Instagram post about landlord and all that kind of stuff. But on the flip side, King of Fried Rice opened like virus. Amma Chi Mian also opening like crazy. So are they holding on to some secret that many F&B owners are unable to crack?
In my opinion, it's because some of these F&B names, right, they are established brand with a good following. There is already a very fixed customer set that are very fixed customer base that large customer base that they really have. Versus when somebody, because we're talking about new ventures, versus somebody who is trying to set up a business, right, and still trying to grow the customer base and following, you do not have as much time as you used to, right, to build up the business. So perhaps where last time, in my opinion, is that for F&B business, right, your rental should not be more than 30% of your revenue. In fact, if it's possible, it should be about 25 or 20% for the business to make a lot of sense, right? But if you don't have that customer base to actually support you to have that kind of level of revenue, you have to build. You need time to build. But when your rental is lower, right, number one, the threshold that you have to hit is lower, and you have a much longer time in terms of cash flow to do that. You can take up to a year to hit a comfortable level. But then with increasing costs, not just rental, it's also in terms of manpower. Okay, the quota has also changed, right? Now you actually have a shorter time. If you cannot make it within like 6 months, right, either you throw in a lot more money or you have to make the hard decision and cut losses.
Also seeing, of course, would be a lot of new franchise coming into play. Because what you mentioned earlier on, it seems to me the lack of brand awareness is one of the main contributing factor. So meaning to say, it is probably easier to open another McDonald's outlet versus opening your own version of McDonald's that's trying to compete against McDonald's. So having said that, would going straight to a franchise somewhat circumvent that problem? And of course, rental is another thing, but would that means that franchise is probably some of the a key area you should look at for those who is keen to look into F&B?
But that's a very good point. I would say that franchise will definitely de-risk part of the startup process because brand awareness and recognition is there. It is a strong brand. Okay. I guess then the other things that we have to look at, right, is in terms of the location, the rental, and the costing. We need to understand one thing is that franchise owners, right, technically you are their customer when you become a franchisee. Right. What they want to do is to sell you that, and then you kind of like work from them and they get royalty and all. And some franchise brands, right, you also must buy the supplies from them as well. Okay, so you become a customer. Whether your business technically make it or not may not be the top priority for them. So the business owner that is taking a franchise to sell F&B business, they need to be able to do a proper calculation and assess the risk in terms of costing and all, whether a certain location makes sense or not. Like some malls in the heartland that are really huge, right? Their rental has gotten to a point that it may not make a lot of sense. If you do the calculation in terms of no matter how much footfall you have, what is the maximum, let's say bubble tea, right? What's the maximum number of, cups of bubble tea you can sell in a day? It's going to be limited by also the capacity and the time that you have for operation. By using that, I feel that the F&B entrepreneurs that actually want to do this, they still not be able to take a calculated risk based on projecting whether it makes sense at a certain level.
Am I also right to say that a lot of all these F&B failures, in a way, is own self-find one? Because like you said, if they have done their sum right and put emotion aside, they would have realized actually this is not feasible to begin.
I actually have friends and even families who are interested to start up an F&B business. So I'll take my cousin as the example here. So one of my cousin actually is very interested in starting an F&B business. So this happened even before COVID. It was about 8 years ago when he first had this thought. So when he came to me, right, he said, okay, he wants to franchise this particular brand from Malaysia for particular food. And he calculated, okay, what is the cost and everything. So he calculated the cost he have to pay the franchisee. He calculated the monthly rental plus the deposit. Okay, but there is a lot of gap in terms of his calculations. So the amount that he actually projected he needs, I told him that it's at least 3 times of that. Because he have not considered operating costs for the next 6 months until he break even. He have not considered a lot of ancillary costs. End of the day, I think it's actually blind spots that leads to failure. If you know exactly what you're getting into and you're ready to bear that risk with the right amount of resources, right, you have a higher chance of success. Not guaranteed, but you have a higher chance of success. So my advice to my cousin back then is that, okay, you're seriously not ready for this. Okay, don't start now. My advice to him was, right, go and work for an F&B operator. So he actually did that for the next few years, working for other F&B business owners. And from there, he learns a lot more things that he didn't know initially. And right now, my cousin has an ice cream shop, a cafe, which is doing, I would say, reasonably well. And it's only possible because he had gained those experience to fill in the gap.
When I started my recruitment business, I think we were all too young to do all those sums. And it took us, I think maybe about a year plus before we started to draw salary. And even before that, the running cost was something that it was never factored in. When you will start to break even, especially given the fact that we are selling the services. It's so hard to find that moment where things become normalized. And along the way, it was just hard. Have to owe your employee salary and then come up with excuses why they still haven't got their pay in their bank. It's a painful experience that, as much as it taught me a lot, it's also things that you do not want to go through. I think over time, it just adds stress to what you're already trying to achieve if you don't do that sum.
Exactly. Yeah, I think everybody will attempt to do the sum. The issue a lot of entrepreneurs, especially first-time business owner, face is these are blind spots. There are areas or rather sums of costs that you didn't consider if you have not gone through it before.
So basically, a quick hack is do your sum times 3. The quick hack is times 3.
I think that is probably a good estimate. If the amount is something that is comfortable, probably you have enough buffer. That's a lot of buffer, but I think that is possible.
Okay, I'd like to go back to currently what you're doing, and for any one of us to stay alive for so long, obviously you need to have business. And some of the readers, some of the audience that I spoke with are also doing consultancy. Some of them are, I think, in teaching as well, etc. For yourself personally, how do you manage to acquire those earlier set of customers and also towards the more current moment?
So for the consulting side, End of the day, yep, I mean, in the initial days, like everybody else, right, definitely I did some digital marketing. And truth be told, I only did that for about 3 months or so, and I stopped. I realized that actually it's a lot easier to come from slightly warmer context. So how I actually get customers, a lot of them are word of mouth. Even to today, a lot of my customers are actually word of mouth. So we have to be, I think end of the day, if let's say what you're actually offering is good and it helps the customer, and the customer sees the benefit of engaging your service, right? And it's not just repeat business from them, but rather they'll definitely introduce their friends and their other business partners to you as well. So that's how my business grew over the years, right? In the beginning, there isn't so much testimonial or clients who have already gone through who I've already helped. So I found it, at least for myself and my own business, right? I found it a lot more effective to go for networking events, to get to know people there. Because at such events, right, if you have a chance to have even though not a very long, maybe like each person you talk to is like 15 minutes to half an hour, but you still have the opportunity to do that face-to-face pitch to them of what you do.
Do you cherry pick the kind of networking event because they can come in so many different variety?
Yeah. So for me, it will be the networking events that is going to have more customers that I'm targeting, which are actually SMEs. And some other events I went for, because I also do grant advisory, I help clients with grants as well. So some of these like networking events or seminar, right, that grant is one of the topic, right? I know that probably the right audience is going to be there. People who are interested in getting help from certain consultancy work, but they are also interested to know more about the available government assistance out there. The hit rate is higher when you go to events that the topics are relevant to what you're doing, and the target audience are basically the customer segment.
So on a regular month, how many networking events? Do you have a target that you set for yourself? 1 month I must attend 3 or something.
So back then, on a monthly basis, right, I go for at least 2. Right, nowadays I go a lot less because I have a lot more referrals from word of mouth. But I still go for networking events that are relevant to my business. But something I also do now that I didn't do in the past is that not only am I going for some of these seminars or networking events, some of these events are basically I'm the speaker. And I'll tell you that is a lot more effective. When you're able to go up to an audience, go on a stage to talk to the audience, you're able to bring out the best point of your services and what you're able to do. And now instead of going one by one to talk to people to see whether, okay, is this person a potential customer? Is this person a potential customer? The people who are interested in what you're offering will come up to you, so it's a lot easier.
Your own election rally.
Something like that.
For listeners who may be new to all this, I think for them, let's assume they have not spoken before, but they're willing to speak. Where should they start looking for speaking opportunities within their realm of expertise?
This is something I don't really have answer. It really depends on the network and the connections that you have.
But how did your first one came to you?
Some of this, right, come from clients and people that know me. And when they're organizing or their friends who are organizing certain events, right, they need speakers to speak about certain topics, and it's my domain expertise. They ask me. Okay. Another possibility, maybe more suitable for those who are just starting to do this, right, is when you go for some of these events, seminars and whatnot, get to know the organizers, right? There may also, once you know the organizers, right, and they know that you are a domain expert in certain areas, there are also possibility whereby the organizers that you meet at a very event may invite you to give a talk at their next event or when there's a relevant slot, and you have demonstrated that you are the domain expert, you're on their mind.
I want to touch on this next part, which is something that I believe you'll be the best person to speak with. A lot of people in this independent space, when they first started, one of the key things they have to go through is the legality. Should I start as a sole prop lah? Should I start as a LLP lah, private limited lah, etc., etc. We don't have a lot of time to cover this, but I think broadly, could you just help the listeners and viewers break down what is each of these components and what is your personal recommendation for anyone that is keen to start their independent?
So there are many points to cover. I'll cover two main points that gives justification to my recommendation here. Okay. So to start off, right, we need to understand the difference between a sole prop partnership and a private limited company. A sole prop is basically a business as an extension of yourself, whereby a private limited is a totally separate legal entity. So I'll touch on this from the legal aspect and also from the tax aspect. If you're doing this, if someone is going to do something like just a part-time business, it's just for pocket money, you're going to like maybe make 20, 30K a year, it's really just for extra allowance, right? Sole prop may be okay, provided that it's not a business that has potential liability. Okay, so with this, I'll jump into probably the legal structural point of view. As a sole prop, right, it's an extension of yourself per se as a business. What it means is that you have actually unlimited liability if the business gets sued. Whereby, as a private limited, it's a separate legal entity. As long as there's nothing illegal, criminal, or like fraud in nature, even if the company gets sued, right, it goes Chapter 11, the company collapses. Creditors are not allowed to touch your personal assets. So your personal wealth is protected there. Okay, so this is one of the reasons. That's why I say that if let's say it's going to be a very small part-time thing, the risk is also very low then. Yeah, so sole prop is fine because the cost of maintaining a sole prop is cheaper on a yearly basis. But if you intend to actually grow this as a business, it's better to start off as a private limited from the onset, because as business grow, potential liability or potential lawsuit and everything will actually increase exponentially together. I have many friends or clients that comes in to me to say, hey, right now I have a sole prop. I want to convert this into private limited. There is no such thing as sole prop convert to private limited. Technically, when you do that, right, the process is really shut this down and open up another one. But when you do this, right, open up a private limited and take over the name. So there's a process to take over the same name. But the problem with this process is that then all the contracts under the sole prop, you have to find a way to novate or assign it to the new private limited. It's a very, very painful process. And some people I know get stuck that, some clients' contract cannot be done.
And it is not possible for a private limited to acquire a sole prop, like, because the sole prop, like you said, is an extension, it's not an entity.
Technically can. A private limited can actually set up a sole prop. Yeah, but to acquire a sole prop is not possible because, right, sole prop is tied to a person. There's no shares. But if you plan this from the start, right, a private limited, then you privately go and start a sole prop, can. But what's the point? There's no purpose in that lah.
I do realize you skip LLP altogether. Limited liability partnership. Is it something that, based on your omission, you wouldn't even like listeners to even consider to begin with?
So actually, I will come to that in the next part. So that's the first part. That is the first point I want to make, which is the legal structure of things. The second part will actually come into LLP will come into play. All right. So for the second consideration is tax. As a sole prop, a partnership, limited partnership, or a limited liability partnership, the money earned in these businesses, right, builds towards your personal tax. Okay. So once again, if a new business owner decides that this is going to be a small business, 20, 30K, it may not be significant. So yeah, it's fine to add on to your personal tax, depending on the tax bracket. However, as a company, you pay corporate tax, meaning that whatever dividends that you take from the company is actually charged under the corporate tax by IRAS. And one of the things we see in budget every single year is government gives a lot of tax incentive, tax rebate and whatnot to companies. Okay, so I need to emphasize the word company. A lot of these are only available to private limited or limited companies, which is not available to sole prop, partnership, LLP or LP. Yeah. So if you're going to build this business and grow it to a certain scale with a sizable income rate, it makes more sense to set it up as a private limited because you get a lot more tax incentive and rebate. In fact, as a new company, for the first 3 years of operation, the first 100,000 of net income, you have a 75% discount from our government. Right, it's a tax rebate. for the first 3 years, and the next 100,000 you have a 50% discount. Yeah, which is not something available for sole prop and whatnot. So effectively, let me put into numbers lah. The first 100,000 of income that you make, right, you're only paying tax as 4.25%. So I'm assuming everybody, the audience, pay tax here. Okay. If you have paid tax, you know personal tax, after you go above 40,000, it's actually higher than 4%. Right?
So on the taxation front, this is something that people would then want to consider, the entity aspect. The other thing that I am also keen to cover, but having bear in mind we are quite short on time, but it's really on the accounting aspect. And why I'm curious to for you to share more on this is because I know friends who are sole prop, LLP. I know for sure their accounting all sala. Because for example, I have a friend LLP. Basically, he charges everything to his LLP, including things like his petrol, to his S-plate car, his grocery. Basically his LLP bank account is his own bank account. Right or wrong?
This is definitely wrong. Yep. So LLP and whatever it is, right, it's actually still a business. And as a sole prop, LLP or sole prop, right, it is still a business. So as a business entity, right, what is allowable in terms of tax deduction, right, is business expenses. Unfortunately, for S-plate car expenses like petrol and whatnot, is something that IRAS do not consider as business expenses. It must be less out. Groceries at or the more we don't have to say, right? It's definitely not. So charging all
Children's
this,
tuition.
definitely not. Okay. In fact, even like medical expenses, or even if you justify yourself as a staff, right, actually shouldn't as well. Medical expenses can be charged to the business. So there's no excuse as far as IRAS is concerned because they have a very comprehensive list of what is tax deductible as business expenses on their website. So a lot of people do not refer, they charge everything there, thinking that it's okay, staff welfare, but that's not true. Okay. Because if let's say you don't have a business to charge this to, right, technically your personal tax is higher. But after you charge orders to the business, right, you're actually paying less tax.
Yep, exactly. That's why they do it.
So as far as IRAS is concerned, ignorant of what is chargeable or deductible or not is not an excuse. End of the day, this is tax evasion in the most serious sense. But of course, if a business owner, this is the first time and they are not aware of all this, right? Depends on how IRAS want to take action. They may give a chance, okay, fine, you pay a false fine, you pay a fine, you pay the penalty and late fees, let's correct it. But the worst case scenario is that if IRAS take the stand that this is deliberate tax evasion, the worst case scenario is that there may be.
So drill term, listeners, please pay strong attention to this. This may be serious stuff, and I think everyone should really spend some time to check out that list that you mentioned.
Actually, for this, I have advice for all the business owners out there, whether it's a new business owner or existing business owner, right? There are things that we are professional about and we know we are good at, right? And there are certain things whereby there are professional companies doing it, like my accounting firm, we're doing all this. It is always better to just engage a professional to take care of all this because there will be too many things to learn and there will be blind spots as new thing happens. This is something very recent. Okay, I don't think my friend is a follower on your podcast, so I'm just going to give this as an example. His wife is an accountant. So over the longest time, he have a few companies. For the longest time, only for some of the more complicated ones, he gets us to do the tax for him. But I just got a call from him last week and something happened. He set up too many companies during COVID and some of them were dormant. They did not follow through with the proper regulatory filing and all that. But his wife is the COPSEC and all that because she is an accountant. She can be named as a COPSEC. 3 of the company got forced shut down, tracked off by aircraft, and he's disqualified from being a director for all companies for 5 years. This is something that they never.
By virtue of not filing for your dormant company, persist.
If you have directors of at least 3 companies, right, that have been forced tracked off by aircraft or like going through a liquidation and whatnot, right, over a period of about 5 years, 3 strikes and you may be disqualified for being a director of all companies for 5 years. Normally people don't have so many different businesses, so this is a lesser known fact, but it is.
I think it does make a lot of sense. And with that, I think maybe for listeners or viewers who is keen to learn more about yourself and also what you do, where should they go to?
Can reach out to me on my LinkedIn. Can also visit my company's website, ASF Advisory Services, and the resource group.
I'll put that into the show notes. Eric, thank you for coming on to the show.
Okay, thank you very much for having me.